Welcome to our channel Crime Loom, the place where true crime stories come alive. In the quiet hours before sunrise, when most people felt safe in their homes, something dark was already moving across small towns that never expected trouble. One missing person became 2, then 3. Cars were left behind with keys still in the ignition, as if their owners had simply vanished into thin air. Local police searched but found nothing. Families waited for answers that never came. No one knew these disappearances were connected. No one saw the pattern forming. But far away, inside a dim office filled with old case files, an FBI agent noticed a small detail that changed everything. A detail so simple that others had missed it. And when he followed that small thread, it pulled open a mystery more dangerous than anyone imagined. This is the moment when the FBI made the connection. The story began on a quiet winter morning in a small town where nothing unusual ever happened. People woke up, made breakfast, and went to work just like any other day. But that peace was broken when a hiker found an abandoned car at the edge of the forest. The doors were unlocked, the keys were still inside, and there were muddy footprints leading away from the vehicle. The hiker felt uneasy, so he called the local police. At first, the officers believed it was simply a case of a driver who got stuck and walked away for help. But things changed when they checked the car's registration. It belonged to a woman named Laura Bennett, who had been reported missing 2 days earlier. The police began a search of the forest. Hoping to find any sign of Laura, they found nothing except a scarf that matched the description given by her family. Because the situation involved a missing person crossing state lines, the FBI stepped in. Agent Marcus Hale, a quiet but sharp investigator known for his calm under pressure, was assigned to lead the case. He arrived in town with a small team, ready to look at every detail. Marcus started with the car. He noticed the seat was pushed far back, much farther than Laura would have needed, suggesting someone else had driven it. He also found a small piece of torn fabric stuck in the doorframe. It was dark blue, rough in texture, and didn't match anything Laura was known to wear. It was small and easy to overlook, but Marcus collected it. He believed every detail mattered. The FBI interviewed Laura's family and friends. They all said she had no enemies, no secret life, and no reason to disappear. She was a teacher, gentle, organized, and always careful. She never traveled alone. She never drove into the forest. None of it made sense. Marcus felt there was something missing, something just outside their view. The next clue came from a gas station camera 2 towns away. Laura's car was seen pulling in late at night, but the person driving wore a hood and kept their head down. The attendant remembered the driver because they never got out of the car and paid with cash. The video was blurry and didn't show a face. Still, Marcus studied the way the person moved, how they kept their left hand in their pocket the entire time. He knew it was important, but he didn't know why yet. As the investigation grew larger, another case file landed on Marcus's desk. It was from a nearby county where a young man had disappeared 6 months earlier. His car, too, had been found abandoned. The pattern felt strangely familiar. Marcus compared both files side by side. 2 missing people, 2 abandoned cars, both near wooded areas. Both cars showed signs of someone else driving them. The local departments had never thought to connect them. But Marcus felt a small spark of recognition when he saw the reports. He requested more files from neighboring states and discovered 3 more disappearances with similar details. Cars left behind, personal items scattered, no signs of struggle strong enough to point to a clear direction. It was as if the people had walked into the forest and vanished. The FBI couldn't call it a pattern yet. But Marcus felt something forming, something troubling. The fabric found in Laura's car came back from the lab with an interesting detail. It was from a jacket used by a specific trucking company. That discovery opened a new possibility. Maybe the suspect worked long-distance routes, moving from state to state. Someone like that could pass through towns without attracting attention. Someone like that could choose victims based on opportunity. Marcus and his team began tracking the trucking company's routes. They noticed that one driver, a man named Daniel Rourke, had been near all 5 towns within days of each disappearance. At first it seemed like coincidence because truck drivers often traveled wide distances. But Marcus didn't believe in coincidences, not when people were missing. Before approaching Daniel, Marcus pulled his background. Daniel had no criminal record, no complaints at work, and no signs of trouble. He was quiet, lived alone, and spent most of his time on the road. Nothing jumped out. Still, Marcus felt something was off. Daniel's schedule was always too perfect, as if someone had planned it carefully. Marcus wanted to question him, but Daniel was already out on another route. The team tracked his stop locations and headed toward the closest one. As they drove, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were only beginning to see the edges of something much larger. He didn't know how the cases were connected yet, but he believed there was a link, something woven through every disappearance, just waiting for the right detail to bring it into focus. What he didn't know was that the next clue would not come from evidence or a witness. It would come from a mistake, one the suspect never expected to make. And when that happened, everything the FBI thought they knew about the case would shift, bringing them closer to the truth, but also deeper into danger than they had imagined. Because somewhere on the road ahead, the suspect was watching, waiting, and preparing for anyone who dared follow the trail. Marcus and his team reached the truck stop just after sunset. The lot was filled with large vehicles resting for the night, their engines cooling in the cold air. Drivers walked in and out of the diner, some talking loudly, others keeping to themselves. It was the kind of place where a stranger could blend in without trying. Marcus scanned the rows carefully, searching for the truck registered to Daniel Rourke. When he finally found it, something immediately caught his attention. The driver's door was slightly open. Marcus approached slowly, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He called out, but received no answer. Inside the cab, the bed was neatly made, and the dashboard was clean. Nothing seemed out of place until he noticed a pair of muddy boots tucked under the bed. The mud wasn't fresh, but it matched the color of the soil found near Laura's abandoned car. Marcus felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. He was closer than before. The team searched the truck carefully. In the glove compartment, they found a folded map with small marks drawn in pen. Each mark matched the locations of the disappearances. It was the first clear sign that the cases were connected by more than coincidence. But they were still missing one thing: Daniel. A truck stop worker approached and told Marcus he had seen Daniel earlier. He remembered him because he always asked for the same thing: hot coffee and a blueberry muffin. The worker said Daniel left about an hour ago, heading toward a small road that led deeper into the countryside. Marcus thanked him and relayed the direction to his team. They set out immediately. The road was dark with no streetlights and few signs of life. Marcus kept replaying the case details in his mind. Why these people? Why these locations? And why abandon the cars instead of hiding them completely? It felt like the suspect wanted the cars to be found, as if they were part of a message. But what message? As they drove deeper, Marcus noticed something disturbing on the side of the road. A small piece of bright red cloth fluttered in the wind, caught on a broken branch. The team stopped to examine it. It belonged to a jacket worn by another missing person from the earlier cases. This was no coincidence. Daniel had been here. The search became more urgent. The team spread out, using flashlights to scan the area. After a few minutes, one of the agents called out. They had found tire tracks leading into a hidden dirt path. The tracks were fresh. Marcus knew they had no time to wait. They followed the narrow road, which twisted through the trees until it opened into a clearing. At the center of the clearing was an old cabin. Dark except for a faint light flickering inside, Marcus signaled his team to approach quietly. The cabin looked abandoned, with broken windows and vines growing along its walls. But the thin line of light escaping through the door crack told a different story. Someone was inside. Marcus placed his hand on the doorknob and slowly pushed it open. Inside, the room was dim. A lantern sat on a table, casting shadows across the walls. The smell of damp wood filled the air. Papers were scattered everywhere: maps, notes, news clippings about missing people. Marcus stepped further inside, scanning the room. Then he froze. In the corner of the cabin was a large wooden door, slightly open, leading downward. A basement. Before he could move, A noise echoed from below, a small, sharp sound, like metal striking stone. The agents drew their weapons. Marcus went first, stepping down the stairs carefully. The air grew colder as he descended. When he reached the bottom, he saw several metal cages, all empty. His heart pounded as he imagined what must have taken place there. But the cages weren't the most important thing in the room. Against the far wall was a board filled with photos of the missing victims, connected with red string. It looked like the suspect had been watching every step of the investigation. Marcus studied the board. The red strings didn't just connect victims to locations, they connected victims to each other. He leaned in closer and noticed dates scribbled next to each picture. They weren't dates of disappearance. They were dates of something else. Then he realized they were intervals, exact time gaps between each event. The suspect wasn't choosing victims randomly. There was a schedule, almost like a ritual. One of the agents called Marcus over. On a table near the stairs was a stack of small objects. Marcus felt his chest tighten as he picked them up. They were personal belongings from the victims: a necklace, a wallet, a watch. Daniel had kept them as trophies. Suddenly, a loud engine roared outside the cabin. Marcus and the team rushed upstairs, but by the time they reached the clearing, all they saw were tail lights disappearing into the trees. Daniel had been watching them the entire time. He had let them get close before slipping away again. Marcus felt frustration rising, but he forced himself to stay focused. Daniel now knew the FBI understood his pattern. That made him dangerous. More dangerous than before. And Marcus knew something else. Daniel was moving toward the next location marked on the map. There was still time to stop him, but only if they made the connection before he did. Marcus and his team drove through the night, racing toward the next location marked on the suspect's map. It was a small town near the border, quiet and peaceful, much like the first town where the investigation began. The marked date was only hours away. If Daniel followed his pattern, he would choose someone soon. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew they had to stop Daniel before another person vanished. As they arrived, the sun was rising over the town. People were opening their shops, sweeping sidewalks, and beginning their morning routines. They had no idea how close danger was. Marcus studied the map again. The marked area was a public park in the center of town, a place where families gathered and joggers passed through. It was the perfect spot for someone who wanted to blend into the background before striking. The team split up and started, quietly observing the area. Marcus walked slowly along the path, watching every movement, every unfamiliar face. He noticed a man sitting alone on a bench near the edge of the park. The man wore a dark blue jacket, the same type used by the trucking company. Marcus's heart beat faster. The man seemed calm, almost too calm, as he watched people walk past. Marcus approached carefully, making sure not to startle him. But before he reached the bench, the man stood up and began walking away. Something about the way he moved, the same posture seen in the blurry gas. Station footage made Marcus certain he had found Daniel. He followed at a distance, signaling the team through his earpiece. Daniel walked out of the park and into a side street. Glancing over his shoulder once, he knew someone was there. Marcus quickened his pace. Suddenly, Daniel turned a corner and disappeared behind an old warehouse. When Marcus reached the corner, Daniel was gone. The alley was empty, except for a door slightly open at the back of the building. Marcus pushed the door gently and stepped inside. The warehouse was dark, filled with dust, old crates, and broken machinery. Footsteps echoed somewhere deeper inside. Marcus motioned for silence as his team entered behind him. They spread out, scanning every aisle. Then they heard a faint cry. Marcus followed the sound to a storage room. Inside, a young woman was tied to a chair, frightened but unharmed. She had been taken only moments earlier. Daniel had moved extremely fast, hoping to complete the abduction before sunrise. Marcus reassured her and instructed an agent to untie her carefully. But Marcus couldn't celebrate yet. Daniel was still here. A sudden crash echoed from the upper level. Marcus ran toward the stairs, taking them two at a time. The metal steps rattled loudly under his boots. The second floor was dim, with only a few broken windows letting in light. He stepped forward slowly, knowing Daniel could be hiding anywhere. Then he saw movement. Daniel rushed from behind a stack of crates and sprinted toward a window. Marcus chased after him. Daniel smashed the glass with his elbow and climbed onto the ledge, ready to jump onto the roof of a shed below. Marcus shouted for him to stop, but Daniel didn't hesitate. He jumped, but his foot slipped on the edge, causing him to land awkwardly. Marcus followed quickly, dropping down onto the shed roof. Daniel tried to run again, limping slightly. Marcus caught up and tackled him to the ground. They struggled for several seconds, each trying to gain control. Daniel was strong and desperate, but Marcus was determined. Finally, he managed to handcuff him, pressing him firmly into the dirt. Daniel stopped struggling and let out a slow, calm breath. He didn't apologize. He didn't deny anything. He simply said, "You were late for the first ones." His voice was cold, empty, as if he had already accepted what would happen next. The team arrived and took Daniel into custody. The young woman rescued in the warehouse was taken to safety, her life narrowly saved. As Daniel was placed into a vehicle, he looked at Marcus one last time, a strange smile forming on his face. Marcus didn't react. He knew men like Daniel enjoyed trying to unsettle their captors. But Marcus had seen enough darkness in his career to stay steady. Back at headquarters, the FBI examined everything recovered from Daniel's truck and the cabin. They found journals describing his movements, as well as chilling notes suggesting he believed he was chosen to carry out his actions. It became clear that Daniel had created the pattern on purpose, hoping someone would discover it. In his twisted mind, being caught was part of the story he wanted to create. Marcus realized that Daniel saw himself as the author of a game, and every victim, every location, was a chapter. But Marcus had broken that pattern. He had made the connection early enough to save the final victim and prevent the cycle from continuing. In the weeks that followed, the families of the missing victims finally received answers. It didn't erase their pain, but they were no longer left wondering. The small towns involved slowly returned to normal life. People still talked about the case in hushed tones. Remembering how close danger had come to their doorsteps, Marcus took some time off after the case. He walked along a quiet beach, watching waves roll in and out. He thought about the moment when he first realized the disappearances were connected. It had been a small detail, a piece of fabric, a pattern on a map, a feeling that something wasn't right. Sometimes he reflected. Big cases were solved not by dramatic moments, but by careful attention to the smallest clues. The case of Daniel Rourke became known in the Bureau as an example of patience, persistence, and instinct. And whenever new agents asked Marcus how he knew the truth before anyone else, he always gave the same answer. Most connections are already there, waiting. The job is learning how to see them, and that is when the FBI made the connection. When a pattern hidden in silence was finally uncovered, and justice found the man who tried so hard to escape it. The case finally ended with the suspect behind bars. But the shadows he left behind stayed with everyone who had lived through it. Families now had answers, yet the weight of those answers would never fully fade. Towns that once felt safe learned how quickly darkness could hide in plain sight. And for the FBI agent who followed the clues, the case became a reminder that even the smallest detail can expose a hidden truth. He knew there would be more cases, more mysteries, more moments when a single connection could save a life. As he walked away from the final report, he understood one thing clearly. The story wasn't just about how the FBI solved it, but how close the danger had always been, and how easily it could happen again. For watching more amazing videos like this, subscribe our channel Crime Loom.